All right, so we have dry fit everything. What I had to come back and do is set up my fence because some of the dados were a little bit tight. And again, I'm not really sure if that's because of humidity. Again, I was using some scraps and I did check for thickness, but some of them could have been a little bit different thickness. And what that caused was when I would go to put the panel in, they were a little bit tight in some of the dados. So I just ran it back through my table saw and kind of skimmed one edge of it. Death to mosquitoes. Got him. But a couple things I like to dry fit because certain parts fit together better than others, so you get to kind of mix and match some of the styles. The other thing is there sometimes can be a decent amount of color differentiation between trees, even in the same species. Like all of this is maple, but you can see there's some color differences in the pieces, so I wanted to try and match them up as best I could where we didn't have, you know, abrupt transitions in color. If there were some pieces that had, you know, slight blemishes in them, for example, I believe this one, see that had a bad place on the back, so, or it had a bad place on it, so I don't want to put that in the front. So I want to make sure when I putting this together that I want that to go in the back. Now, we didn't talk a lot about cutting out the cutting up the 1/4 inch plywood, but one thing that's nice to take notice of is, if you'll notice, these three, you want to try to grain match, or, you know, kind of do a series here with this grain, especially when there's things in it like these ambrosia beetles. You know, they make those in the trees. If we get any of those kind of markings, we want to make sure that we put those in a series. It really looks cool when you get it all set up. So this set here will have these matching marks, you know, kind of like that as they go up. So we want to take note of that on our sheets and make sure that we try to keep these things in a series. Now, these 4 pieces, this set and this set, are 2 middle drawers, or 2 sections of middle drawers there. What you have to do is kind of skip ahead, and to be honest with you, I missed it, but luckily it matched up pretty well up top. What you really want to do is when you cut this rip, you want to cut these 2 and then cut one of these. Why? Because that right there, that first skinny one, is going to be your top piece. Now, had I caught this when I was setting up this nest sheet, I would have moved these 2 over here. And so when you're cutting pieces, you know, you would have known, oh, hey, I got to cut these 2, and then I need to cut one of these, and these 2, and then cut one of those. All right, but you know, it worked out. That looks pretty good. That's the one that I messed up on. That one is my 3, 4, 5 right here. 3, 4, 5. So that worked out. So it's nice to be able to do that whenever you can. Same thing here and here with these 2 pieces, and here with those. Okay. So setting up, dry fitting everything, it allows me to count my doors. It allows me to measure and make sure that I've got the right dimensions on everything. Going back on my sheet, I can check my dimensions here on my sheet, my overall width and my height, so I don't have any surprises later. One thing I did notice is on these doors, the big doors, this door, stop it, wind. These doors, I noticed they're about 3/32 wide. I couldn't figure out why. All the rails are 2 1/4. My tenons are 1/2 inch. You know, everything seemed to check out. My rails are the right width. It's just, you know. So what we'll do is we'll put them together, and we'll go back and we'll shave off. We'll just shave off just a little bit off of each side. Okay. And that's after we got it glued up. So after we get them glued, we're going to come back and we'll take them on the edge sander over there, and we'll sand those up, get everything nice and smooth. I have another video on how to glue these doors up, but we're going to glue them up. Make sure all your edges, do the best you can when you line these up. Make sure your edges are as close as possible, and you know, check your surfaces too. And when you get it glued up, you only have about 8 to 10 minutes set time on that glue. Get them clamped up. Make sure all this stuff lines up as best as possible. When you're staining, you got to keep a rag. Keep you a little bucket of water and a rag. And as you squeeze out, you want to wipe that off. And let me pull that out. Let's talk a little bit about glue up. So we want to make sure we get a good bit of glue on our shoulders and our tenon there, or this tenon, and make sure we get glue there. There's no need to glue the inside of our stiles. The only thing we need to put glue on is our shoulders on our tenons, and then on a tenon itself, and get those clamped up. Don't need a lot of squeeze pressure on these. It's hard for me to say how much pressure, but don't wrench down on these things. As soon as you start seeing a little bit of squeeze out, you're good. Stop, and then wipe it off. The reason we want to wipe off as much glue as possible is because if you don't wipe the glue off, it's more that we have to go back and sand off later, or if you don't sand it all off, it might block the stain from penetrating the wood, and that's a bad problem to have. Now, one thing when we glue up, we want to make sure we don't get glue in these corners. We don't want glue anywhere. Don't glue up any of this panel, and don't glue anything. You got to be careful not to put too much glue on these shoulders, because when you squeeze out, you don't want to be getting, you know, glue up here in the corners, because it's really hard to wipe out. And you'll notice that when you go put stain on, if you've got glue that you couldn't wipe away there, you're going to see it. So try to keep most of your glue like from maybe here back. So when you're gluing this tenon up, again, you want to stop kind of right here, stop right where that tenon is, and glue that part of the shoulder. You can put some glue here, just don't overdo it. So from here back is good. That's a good surface area. And of course we flip it over on the back, put pin nails in here. Don't put finished nails, 18 gauge. Technically, since they're drawers, you could, but I prefer to use pin nails. That's after you have it tightened. Don't put pin nails in there before you tighten the clamps. All right, doors, definitely want to use pin nails there. Doors, because when they open, you'll see the backs. The backs of our drawers, we don't really need to worry so much about that. Now, one thing that I mentioned in another video, notice we have a 1/4 inch reveal there. Well, we also have a 1/4 inch reveal here. So what we're going to have to do is on the back side, we're going to need to cut another piece. What we'll need to do is cut another piece, just a scrap. We'll need to kind of fill in this back as best we can. There's still a little bit of reveal there, but what we don't want to happen is when we glue this thing up to the drawer front and we put our pulls through here, we don't want this to get sunk in, right? Because if we put our pulls on and we don't have a backing, then this part will pull up to the back of the drawer front, and you'll get a bow up front. We don't want that. So So again, all these are going to be stained, so be careful with any kind of grease on your hands or whatnot after these get glued up and they dry. And as we glue, of course, we put wood filler in where we need to. Get them on the edge sander, get the edges cleaned up, then we'll come back, sand the faces with some 120 and get these planer track marks out, and then hopefully start staining.